Hello, the Sword and the Pen Reflections here. It is my casual alternative to the formal channel, The Sword and the Pen, link up there. So this is my second half of the rambling thoughts on the entire series for, the Netflix live action adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I just wanted to talk about the character arcs, because there's been a lot of discussion online about, oh, they've ruined these characters. And I feel like this is a really interesting topic, because there were definitely character changes made, and I personally really wanted to see that the characters, world building, themes, tones, all that good stuff, I wanted to see that they were very much the same or honored. And in the case of the characters, I saw a lot of honoring being done, not exactly the same characters and arcs that we saw. And so I want to discuss that. Again, this is not my critique. This is literally just me randomly talking about stuff about the characters and, where I thought they started and ended, and possibly why I think these choices were made, how I think some of them work and how some of them I think didn't work so good. With Katara, she's obviously not the same as she is in the animated series, like at least in the beginning. And for me, I understand when people see her like this and go, she's not the same. She's been watered down. She's basically like a bland version of Katara, if that even. But I don't see an unfaithful treatment of her. And I'm going to explain why. And this, you can agree with this or not agree with this, I don't care. But I'm just going to talk about it. So in the animation, Katara is very outspoken, very passionate, has a lot of anger, which she expresses quite openly. We see her do it right away with Sokka when he says some sexist remark to her while they're out fishing, and she's throwing her arms about, yelling at him, and she literally splits the ice behind her, and that causes the frozen bubble that Aang is in to pop up. So that's what she's like at the beginning in episode 1. And we see this all the way through season 1 until the end, when she lashes out at Master Pakku. She finally can't take it anymore. And in exactly the same way that she was yelling at Sokka, she's now yelling at Master Pakku and challenges him to a duel. And then, it's a hopeless duel, but she does it anyway. Even though we see her skills grow like this, we don't see her personality go through a whole lot of change. Yes, we do have some change, but not a whole lot. Like, this is a very big thing for her to be explosive like this in the beginning and pretty much equally explosive in the end. What I think the show was trying to do is say, we want to see that there is some character growth to match her skill growth. And what I think was done was, let's take Katara and consider what her situation is. So in the live action, she cannot waterbend in public. She has to do it secretly, because the Fire Nation will, if they get word of it, they will take her away or kill her, which is what they would do in the animation too. But for some reason, she wasn't hiding her waterbending. So I kind of go, all right, you've kind of figured out that there was a possible, inconsistency in her situation and her not her personality, but at least her openly doing waterbending. Like, everybody in the water tribe knows that she's a waterbender. For some reason, it's not a secret. And yet the firebenders could come at any day and interrogate some 5-year-old and oh, but Katara is a waterbender. Like, that, it doesn't seem like that would be something that everybody should know about. So I like that it's a secret. And I like that she's not able to do very much because she can't practice ever. And her personality kind of matches this. Remember that bending is an expression. It is an extension of yourself. If you're not able to do it, you're not being your full self. So for her to be more reserved, for me, thematically makes sense for her character. My only concern is she still Katara? Now, by the time we get to the end of the live action adaptation, she's doing the things that Katara did in the series, or in the animated series.
Women aren't allowed in combat. I thought you knew.
No, I didn't. I wouldn't have accepted it if I did.
It's not a matter of accepting anything, it's how things are done.
It's stupid and it's wrong.
This is not up for debate.
I've been fighting firebenders ever since I left home. Can any of your men say that?
That doesn't matter.
Why not?
Because this isn't about them, it's about you. You're not strong enough. Women aren't strong enough. You haven't been training and preparing to lay down your life for everyone here. And I'm not going to let what happened to the Southern tribe happen here. I'm not going to fight you.
Because you're afraid of what you might learn. That you're wrong.
Please, go back to the healing huts with the other women.
Is that all you got?
That, to me, shows that there is a difference in her personality now. She is coming out of her shell more. Even when she talks to Sokka, she seems more like, I don't care what you say, I'm doing this. And him to say, you know what, I agree with you, I was just gonna say, go kick his butt. Like, that to me shows that in the beginning, she was less inclined to disagree with Sokka.
Not everything is about preparing to fight.
We're at war.
Waterbending is what built our culture. Our way of life. Keeping it alive is our duty.
Keeping ourselves alive is our duty.
I know that. And if Dad were here...
But he's not here. I am.
I'm gonna challenge Paku to fight. I know. He's a master. I know he's probably gonna mop the floor with me, but it doesn't matter. All my life, I've held myself back. And I'm not just gonna let someone else do it to me now.
By the end of the series, she's like, I don't care what you think, I'm doing this. And he's like, okay, like, yeah, go for it. That is what I think we were trying to see, and by what the live action was attempting to do. And when you get to the end, and she's the same person that she is in the animation, I think that's the main deal for her, because there, like I said, not a whole lot of character growth in the first season for Katara, but this has given her something to grow to. This has said, let's just start her more reserved and have her end more like the Katara we all know. Now, going forward, this creates an opportunity for Katara to be more explosive with her anger. The first time we see the anger really come out was against Jet, right? So she immobilizes Jet when she realizes what's up with him. But even there, it's kind of like, I just don't agree with what you're doing, and I'm physically going to stop you. And by the time we get to Paku, it's more about anger. She's upset that this is the situation. And she's like, you know what? I can do this. I'm gonna do it. And beyond this, we could now maybe see, so she's no longer in this restricted situation. She can be expressive. And I would love to see that in season 2, we see the anger really building up in her. Like, we see that it's starting to be something that just comes out every once in a while. But that is what I came away from with Katara. Is she different from the animation? Yes, there's no denying that. She is not the same character. Well, not fully the same character in the beginning. The rest of her is pretty close. That's what I'm trying to say. But by the time we get to the end of the series, we're basically right at where Katara is in the animated series at the end of season 1. So going forward, we have this opportunity to really grow up to her anger. And having some growth like that does give her character a sense of journey. Otherwise, this might be what happens. Like, this is what I'm thinking. Would an audience who's never seen the original animated series see Katara at the end of the first season and go, what was her, like, where was her growth? All she did was gain some skills. Like, where was her personality growth? I could definitely see that being a concern on the part of the production to, like, maybe we need to make sure she has an arc, that she has some change, like, personality-wise. Honestly, skill growth is secondary to personality growth. It should complement personality growth or like character growth. And so this gave her something to grow up into by having her start in a more reserved position. Anyway, end of Katara. Please like, subscribe, and comment, even if it's just with an emoji. It's a free way to support the channel. Or if you're feeling really generous, check out my Patreon, Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button. You can even leave me a one-time tip. Information is in the description and below. Sokka. Okay, so Sokka's differences are completely different from what Katara's were. I felt like he was the most like his original character in the entire gang. Zuko pretty close too. But okay, so the sexism thing, I was trying to remember what the heck was it we were talking about. Now, for Sokka, I feel like it was toned down to the point that it's like, it's something that you can interpret as sexism, but it's never explicitly sexism. And I noticed this, you couldn't figure this out until you watch the entire series all the way through. In the first episode, I was like, yeah, I could see that some of his behavior could definitely become sexist. So I was expecting in season 2 there to be something that was more overtly sexist or more obviously sexist. Now, the way he reacts to Suki...
I could run you through the basics if you want. Wow, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Us Southern Water Tribe warriors are known more for our hand-to-hand fighting anyway. Oh, right now? Okay.
I mean, yeah, his pride is definitely hurt. But I don't know if it would have been the same, like he would have behaved the same if it was another dude, you know? So to me, yes, this is something that definitely comes across as pride, but very hard to interpret as anything other than like a sexist pride. But it was still not overt, and it really could have been made more overt. I think there's a fear of not being politically correct with this series, with this animated series, and it's already very politically correct. Like, as is, it translates quite well. And the thing that people are complaining about online, the folks who are saying they've taken away Sokka's sexism, therefore it has destroyed him. It has not destroyed him. He was only sexist for like 4 lines in the entirety of the series. But basically, the sexism issues for Sokka are something that can be interpreted, but they're never overt. And I think that the show could have easily gotten away with just him saying something totally obviously sexist, as long as we see that humbling, him coming to realize and even state what he did, like, it was wrong. I should have looked at you as a warrior and not just as a girl. Like, he has 2 speeches in the animation that are quite good. The first one, him just humbling himself. And the second one, him blatantly apologizing for treating somebody like a girl when he should have treated them like a warrior. And I loved Suki's correction of I am a warrior, but I'm a girl too. Beyond that, in the animation, we don't really see this as being an issue. Now, in the live action, because we have taken out the overtness and kind of replaced it with it could be just his pride. It very much strongly comes across as just his pride, but you could interpret it as sexism as well. The only other instance in the entire live action where I see that they wanted us to interpret this as sexism is when we get to the finale, not the finale, but the final. It's the end of episode 7 when he's talking to Katara and he's supporting her wanting to go and face Master Pakku, which is something that he was definitely not inclined to do before this moment. And it was because he went and talked to Yue as a girl, because of his experience with Suki. Like, I can see how these things would lead him to that point. So I had no problem with them not including the sexism overtly, but I do think, yeah, it would have been better if they did have that sexism in there. So if I was to talk to the writers of this show, I would say, look, if there's something in the show, in the original series, that makes you go, oh, should we update this to be politically correct? I think the majority of audiences today would feel that the things that were touched on in the animated series were handled very well and would translate very well to live action. They'll have to be done a little bit differently, but Sokka's sexism was overt in the animated series, and then he very clearly got past it. He was humbled, and then he recognized what he did and actually came out and said it. And we loved him because he got over something that was really hard for him to get over, and it helped him to improve as a human being. So my message would be, don't be afraid if the animated series is overt about something to be overt about it. Like, don't be afraid, because these things, I think, translate quite well. They are handled quite well in the animated series. So take your guidance from there. Don't feel like you have to change anything. Okay, Aang's changes. I don't think I need to go too deep into Aang's changes. For me, this is a personal preference, but it's also a logical preference. I'm not saying like, oh, I'm always right, but I'm just saying that this absolutely makes sense. I don't really understand how it couldn't make sense, unless you've got some argument for me. But Aang has just learned that his entire family has been slaughtered. And I know I've said this in other videos before. And the next episode, all he wants to do is ride on Elephant Koi and show off to a bunch of kids and, go on little fun adventures. This is so not the behavior of somebody who has literally lost everything. Like there's nothing left of his old life except Appa. So it would not have translated well. And you can say that it was used as a distraction, like, oh, he was just riding the elephant coin stuff to distract himself from his pain. It never came across as a distraction from his pain. So if they were going to do that in the live action, they would have had to have had this dark note under everything that he was doing. We would have had to have seen that he was like trying to stay away from the pain, like that you could see it come upon him and then he'd have to like force himself out of it. But the main thing is, it made sense what they did with his character. And I didn't feel like they lost his playfulness. I definitely think they could have put more of the playfulness in there, but it didn't bother me that he was like this. And by the time we get to the end of the series, just like with Katara, by the time we get to the end of the series, he has acquired his new family. Like, Gyatso was the one to call Aang out of his trauma, his avatar state in the memory of Gyatso, called him out of the avatar state in the Southern Air Temple. And when we get to the Northern the Northern Water Tribe, and he goes Koizilla on everybody, it's Katara who's assuring him that we will be there for you. Like, we are your family now. That is what called him out. So he is essentially replacing Gyatso with Katara. So now his family feeling of I'm not alone has been healed, or it is replaced. Maybe not completely healed, but it's been replaced. So he will have that stability, that foundation beneath his feet, so that he can be a little bit more free, find a little bit more joy. So I expect, just like with Katara, I expect her to find more anger in season 2. I expect that in season 2 for Aang, we're going to see more of this happier, playful Aang. The one that now feels like he has a home, he has people, and he's not alone. Because up until the end, he really felt like he was alone. As for his not learning waterbending, I was totally fine with that, because his waterbending learning in season 1, I know the book 1 is named Water, but he didn't need it at the end of the first season. Like, he literally is told by Master Pakku that, like, you're a goof off, like you're not even bothering to take this seriously, whereas Katara was taking it seriously. So he doesn't need to have waterbending mastered by the end of season 1. That is not a priority for his character, because he literally doesn't need to use it. Koizilla is La, who is one of the original waterbenders. That is where the waterbending ability of Koizilla comes from, not necessarily from Aang, although he's in the Avatar state too. So anyway, so I didn't mind this. And we know that there's going to be a time gap between season 1 and season 2. So I'm expecting that we're going to start off with the gang just leaving the Northern Water Tribe, and we'll have that moment like we did at the beginning of the siege on the Northern Water Temple, or the siege of the Northern Water Tribe, where you have that scene with Master Pakku going like, yeah, look at all the learning that you've done. Like, you're just he makes a snowman. And he's like, but look at Katara. She's a badass now. That is what I'm expecting to see. As a matter of fact, it would be very nice to even just start out with that scene. But yeah, because then it'll imply that they've been there for a long time. They've been training, and Aang is kind of fallen into his playful spirit again. He's feeling relieved at not having, at now having a family and a home again. So again, ending with an Aang that is more like the Aang from the original animation, to me, is a good thing. And I don't think he actually ended in that place. I think he ended right before that place. I think that my expectation is going into season 2, he's ready. He's already taking that next step to being the old Aang. But by the end of the first season, it's the logical next step. Like, we see that he has reached a point where it's like, okay, from here going forward, he can be more like the Aang that we knew. So I didn't see that his arc was unfaithful. I saw that as long as it is keeping within, like, all right, we can get him to the original Aang, that's not the destruction of a character. That's literally just a different path to the same character. Zuko was basically the same Zuko as before. I didn't see anything that was really different. Like, he behaved exactly like Zuko does in the animation. The only difference with Zuko is there is a difference in the audience experience of Zuko. So watching the animation, I was totally convinced he's a bad guy until the storm. Like, I thought he was just a somewhat incompetent and kind of whiny bad guy that I'm, oh, it's going to be funny watching these kids, constantly beating his butt. But by the time we got to the storm, I was like, holy crap, this character's so interesting now. And definitely I want him to become a good guy. Like that, my perception was totally flipped on this character. So that was a really exciting thing to happen, to get there and go, oh my gosh, you guys, they're going to give Zuko a redemption arc. I just know it. And dang, we didn't know then that we were in for such a great redemption arc. But now in the live action, I'd have to ask a newbie if they felt this way. But in the live action, I started noticing hints that he's a good guy pretty soon. It was that first conversation with Iroh when Iroh's like, it's really hard to see you get your hopes up every time that there's a sign. And he kind of like looks almost like he's defeated at knowing that, yes, I get excited about this often and it always ends up being nothing. But then he's like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like it'll all be worth it when I return home in glory. Like that was to me a very strong hint that he's actually a good guy. And then we saw more stuff later, like in the second episode when he's with Iroh and they're walking around the pier and Iroh's looking for food. To me, there was a lot of hints there that Zuko is not a bad guy. But again, it wasn't overt. Like watching the animated series, those early episodes with Zuko, I notice the hints that he's actually a good guy more on repeat. Like, having seen this whole series and I know where it's going, I can see the little indications. So really only a newbie, I think, would be able to tell us if it was too strongly hinted that he's a good guy. And Iroh was basically Iroh. I liked him. It was a different take on Iroh for sure, but not a whole lot different. It's literally just his enjoyment of the world around him it's basically the same. It's a different energy though. I think Iroh in the animation was more like he was very laid back. And we're not seeing that as much with Iroh in the live action.
More tea, please.
But he's doing all the same things. So I am curious to see where the actor is going to take Iroh. But I loved a lot of the scenes that we had with them, like the funeral, the scene with the Earthbender whose brother was killed. And basically every scene with Zuko I really enjoyed. Especially the really emotional ones. Those were the best ones by far. Fire Lord Ozai. I know that people are concerned that he looks like he's being made into a sympathetic character, but I keep remembering the thing that Zhao said at the end to Zuko.
Did you really think the Fire Lord was going to take you back? Ozai was playing with you. It was all a game. And the winner is the one without the scar from Daddy. Ozai was just using you as motivation for your sister. You were the fire in which her iron was forged. That's all you were.
If that line of Zhao's is meant to be accurate, then it exposes that Fire Lord Ozai really doesn't have any love for Zuko, which is the thing that, it's pretty obvious throughout the entire animation that Fire Lord Ozai is just looking for opportunities to expel Zuko. Like the one time that we saw him being good to him, actually it's 2 times, is when Zuko returns to the Fire Nation in the beginning of season 1. And then we hear off screen that Fire Lord Ozai wasn't going to start the war meeting without Prince Zuko. Like, we didn't think you would need an invitation. You would just know you're expected to go, which is we didn't actually see Fire Lord Ozai doing that. We just hear that that's what he did. But then every other thing that we see of him, he does not love Zuko. And in the live action, there was a hint of there is love. And I never once got the impression that it was actual love, like it was a good love. This is a perversion of what love is. Like maybe Ozai's been through something himself and now he he believes that by pushing his kids, by showing his kids that mercy is weakness, by making his kids tough as hell, like that is true love. Like that's what love is, which is horrible. But there were a few indications that that's not really the case. In the comic book, is it comic book, graphic novel, whatever, The Search. I did not read it, but I read the summary of it, like a detailed summary. I know what happened in it. And I know that Fire Lord Ozai was pretty much under the impression that Zuko might not actually be his son. And there was a line in the live action that hinted at that thought in his head.
Don't do this. He's your son.
We'll see.
And then you could see Iroh's like shocked look at that response. And I felt like this is Ozai, gosh, mixing up their names, kind of testing Zuko. If Zuko is as ruthless as I would be, then he's my son. And if he's not as ruthless as I would be, then he's not my son. He must be, my wife's boyfriend's kid. And so I thought that was good, that it was very subtly put in there, if that's what that intention was. I thought that's what the intention was, because I know that the research has been done on all of the graphic novels and the animations and everything. Like, there was stuff included in the live action that you could only have gotten from the graphic novels and the novels. Anyway, so, okay. There was that. And then, of course, Zhao saying this last line, which made me think that that very well could be the case, especially since we never saw Ozai smile at Zuko. He was always looking for a reason to put him down, but he does smile when he sees that Azula has achieved lightning bending. So, and then, demanding to go out and be tested on the world. And we'll talk about that discussion there. Okay, actually, no, we can talk about it here. So would Ozai take lightly to being disrespected or whatever like this? And that's totally debatable. That's something, it could go either way. You could say, oh no, Ozai would never do that. Or you could say, he might. And the argument for he might is, well, if the whole purpose was to make his kids ruthless, then standing up to him but following through would be the thing that he would want. Like, that's what he's hoping to do. And if this whole thing with Zuko was a charade to make Azula so jealous that she would achieve this kind of power and this kind of mentality, then it doesn't matter what happened with Zuko. What matters is what happens with Azula. And if he doesn't mind that she does this, that doesn't matter. Like, everything else doesn't matter. So I don't know. It's debatable for sure. Oh yeah, I think I forgot to mention the whole what if Ozai wouldn't lose to Zuko. It never really bothered me, the duel. Yeah, I guess you could say okay, Zuko at one point had the upper hand and could have taken out Ozai. So then it's then he's really not that formidable, because if we know Aang can take out Zuko and Zuko can take out the Fire Lord, then Aang can definitely take out the Fire Lord. Well, that's not including the comet, first of all. So there's that. But I did see Ozai toying with Zuko through most of that duel. It could have been a slip up on his side, and you could say, oh, we just forgive it for that. I don't know how I felt about Zuko almost getting Ozai. It didn't bother me so much that I'm it's ruined his character. It wasn't maybe the greatest decision. I kind of like the idea that Ozai just overpowers him and takes him out. But whatever. I don't know. It was okay. I could take it or leave it. I do think that the choice in the animation was better. So there. I think with Azula's character, a very short discussion of what she was. So in the animation, I know that there's this obsession with perfection for her. And that's literally the first thing that we get from her.
Almost perfect. One hair out of place.
Almost isn't good enough.
That is pretty much exactly what we were building up to her mentality, throughout the entire live action. She has to end at her believing that almost perfect is not good enough. It's perfect or nothing. And that's what the whole That's what the whole live action was doing. But yeah, is she unfaithful to her character in the original series? I don't think so. Again, I think that this was an attempt to bring Azula into the story. How did she become how she was? And she can be just like how she was in the animation through the entirety of season 2 and 3. And when we get to the end of season 3, her mental breakdown won't feel like, to me, how it felt in the animation. Even though I loved it, I still thought it was great. But I was like, dang, I didn't see this coming. Like, I didn't see her totally losing her cool. I loved that it started when she lost May and Ty Lee as allies, when they turned on her. That was fantastic. But this gives her sort of a, we can see where it came from earlier. The only real depth into her character, her mental frazzle that we got was that conversation in the mirror. I wouldn't say that's the only one, but that was the only real deep dive into her character. You know, all the stuff, you know, where she was like, there was a pit in the cherry that you gave me, you know, and what if I had choked on it? You know, all these, like, her getting freaked out about these things and definitely losing control of control. That we could now see that happening to her and understand where it came from. That her entire life has been about being perfect is the only acceptable place for you to be. And then for things to not be perfect, for her to feel like her best friends have turned on her, like all of this, her whole world has come apart and she has no control over it anymore. That is a good place. We've taken her on a good journey to get her so that when we have the end of season 3, it won't feel like she went from this totally collected and manipulative person to now she's destroyed. Now we see where it came from. Does it destroy that middle bit where she's collected and like ferocious and terrifying and kind of nuts, but not totally nuts? Does it destroy that? Absolutely not. So that's my thoughts on Azula. Anyway, that is the end of my thoughts, my second half of my rambling thoughts, just considering the series as a whole. Did this adaptation do everything that I was hoping it would do? Was it very, very high quality? Was it very, very faithful to the original source material? Is it something I can show to my friends and family who've never seen the animation and they would be able to understand why I love this world, these characters, these themes so much? For the most part, yeah, it did. I'll probably be telling some of my friends who are more knowledgeable in East Asian mythology or who have a background in writing that they need to overlook some of the writing issues that I'm seeing. But I don't think that they're going to notice some of the narrative choices that somebody who is a fan of the original source material are going to be annoyed by. Instead, I think that they're going to be charmed by the world and the characters and the potential that this whole setup brings to a big epic story. And so my critiques going forward are going to be in the spirit of, this was a great start, but we do have to fix some things, otherwise it won't be so great going forward. As it stands, we have a leg up on the Harry Potter movies, and this absolutely can get to that same place that we were in the latter movies of that series, because this does have some of the best character moments that I have seen in storytelling, and I can't wait to be able to share that with more people. I'm so pleased that so many people in my comments are saying that this is a first-time view for them, that they've never seen the series before, but watching the live action interested them so much that now they're going and watching the animation too. And that is something that no amount of praise of the animation could really do. There are some people who just won't take an interest in it at all. But if seeing this live-action adaptation can stir enough curiosity in them to actually go and watch the original animation, I'm totally pleased. Welcome to the fandom. Again, this was not my critique, and my critique will be in the spirit of I want to make Season 2 better than Season 1, so I will talk about things that I liked and was impressed by, as well as things that I was less impressed by or think were outright not good choices, and discuss how I think they might have been fixed. But yeah, so I hope that you'll enjoy going on that journey with me. That'll be the very next episode that I put up, or next video that I put up. And yeah, please like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. If you're feeling super generous, check out my Patreon or Ko-fi, or hit the money heart thanks button and leave me a tip. And be good to yourself.